Next speaker, please. Karen Downing.
Good evening, Karen Downing, 500 Washington Ave. I just feel I'm in this hurricane of rent increase. I've been paying for 12 years my rent on time with legal leases. Due to management selling properties, we haven't had a lease in 2 years, and I was wondering if somebody would take a look at this. They sent me this lease 2 weeks ago, dated September 2021. If I do not sign it, there will be a $500 fee, and I'm being told I'm going to be evicted. And when my lease is up in October, they want to send me another lease to increase another $100. There's about 14 tenants of us in Dutch Village going through the same situation. I've been calling lawyers. At this point, I just don't know what to do. Is this legal that they're making me sign a lease that's dated 2021? So at this point, I'm totally, from a different angle. I'm just looking for advice. I've been trying to get legal aids to get a lawyer, but apparently everybody's busy at this time. So I just wanted to let the city know what's going on over there, and we need help. We don't know what direction to go to. If somebody could give us a procedure or an outline, I'd be happy to do it, but we're just lost over there in Dutch Village. And there was never a manager in the office, now there is, and they refer to us to a line in Brooklyn, which nobody answers the phone. So we're kind of at a dead end zone here. So I'm just looking for advice and help. Thank you so much for your time.
And I encourage you to reach out to your alderman. They might be able to help. This is, we're not here to answer questions, but I would reach out to your alderman. Your Ward 2, which is Carl Frankel.
Thank you so much.
Next speaker, please. Sterling Cruz.
Everybody, obviously, there is no question that there is a housing crisis. Urge support of the declaration of a housing crisis. Stabilization is only one piece of the picture. We need development. We need smart zoning. Thank you for all your interest.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Emma Darwin.
My name is Emma Dartmouth. I'm at 283 East Union Street, and I'm here because I support the declaration of housing crisis.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Shannon Cruz Hart.
My name is Shannon Cruz Hart, and I live at 68 West O'Reilly in Ward 9. And I just want to thank my older person, Michelle Hirsch, who is remote tonight, for taking leadership on this resolution. We're hearing a lot of different sides, different angles, but I know that people are really hurting in terms of not having affordable housing. And it's a big picture, it's a complicated picture, but in the immediate, we need to declare an emergency. So I encourage everyone to vote yes on the resolution 144. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Joshua Sheryl.
Joshua Shirley. I live 82 Burn in Milwaukee. We definitely heard a lot of different sides for sure about this issue, but I think the bare minimum, as another speaker spoke to earlier, should be to most certainly enact the Emergency Tenant Protection Act here in Kingston. As someone who has rented for a good majority of my life, my entire adult life until very recently, when I was afforded the opportunity to buy a home, which I'm very grateful for. In Kingston here, I intend to make this my forever home. My husband and I have absolutely loved the community here in Kingston, and I think part of what makes this community so vibrant is that it has continued to be welcoming for people of all income brackets, and the density we have here in Kingston compared to the rest of Mid-Hudson is absolutely something that we should look to preserve in every capacity. And as other people have said already, this is one small part of what the council can do to help make this housing crisis better. A couple stats that scare me, as a homeowner, but also as someone that cares about, having affordable housing. I think a lot of renters have been put in a position where they are essentially subsidizing what are effectively bad investments by a lot of landlords. I won't comment further on that, but take that as you will. The number of available homes, so this is for purchase, obviously connected to the broader housing crisis. The Mid-Hudson Valley has decreased by 63% between January 2020 and April 2022. It is clear that many things needs to be done to actually, create new housing stock, but in the interim, putting a pause on rent increases will certainly ensure that more people have a place to live and don't end up homeless or paying exorbitant amounts of money in a hotel. A record number of corporations, I think that's an important word to use, investors, not individuals, are buying up remaining housing stock across this country. Nearly 1 in 5 houses sold in the top 40 US metros, often areas with lowest income residents have been hit harder by this crisis. This is, obviously contributing specifically to the lack of housing stock available to us. I know 1,200 units doesn't sound like a lot, but these are individuals and people that are clearly struggling, and thus these are a lot of people that you could do something to help. So thank you for considering this resolution. You pass it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Justin Orsham.
Hello, I'm Justin Orsham, in favor of voting yes for the ETPA. I thank all who are going to move forward with supporting this. I hope that we do. Asking whether Kingston is in a housing emergency feels a bit like calling a city inspector to determine if a burning home needs water. The house is already on fire. In fact, it's a bit more like the inspector arrived 2 years late to look at the smoldering ruins. We're in one of the highest inflationary periods of our time. We're on one of the greatest housing crises of our time. We know rental rates have skyrocketed largely by predatory investment, folks, landlords, price hiking, our neighbors. The ETPA that passed 2 years ago when it was originally available would have protected around 1,200 renters, many of whom have since been displaced. We have failed them by this delay. Let's take a moment to reflect on the history of the ETPA in Kingston. 2020, when it was first being considered, the city did a housing vacancy study to determine if we could opt in. To qualify for the ETPA, Kingston had to prove that it met a threshold of 5% vacancy of rental units, meaning that it would be in a housing emergency due to limited available rental units. Any renter at the time, if you go and look at Zillow and available rental units, could have told you barely anything. But the study was contingent on landlords participating and accurately self-reporting the degree to which their properties were occupied. For any landlords who didn't want tenants to be protected, it was in their interest to skew their numbers or refuse to participate. Surprise, surprise, that's what happened. No. One of the largest corporate landlords at the time, ENF Management, actively skewed their numbers. Around 20 other landlords refused to participate, and this stymied the city from moving forward. But even more so, this was a failure of our city officials to push forward with the ETPA. Let's be clear, for the past 2 years, the city could have moved forward with this, but chose not to. This is a massive failure by the city to protect its people. It failed hundreds of renters who have been since displaced, and hundreds more who are continuing to get displaced or are on the verge. If you want a case study of what happens when you don't pass these protections, you have the past 2 years as an example. When you had this hearing 2 years ago, many renters, we door knocked 1,200 units, brought them here with us. Folks who were on the verge of getting evicted, getting priced out, Most of them are no longer in Kingston. Frankly, the damage is done. Many of the people that this was protected 2 years ago are already evicted or priced out. For those who are still here, we need these protections. Of course, we need additional efforts. Of course, this is a complex issue. But in the immediate, we need the ETPA as a stopgap. The past 2 years have only showed us what happens if we don't decide to work with this. Please make the decision we didn't make then. Pass. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Tyler Vanderhoff.
My name is Tyler Bakerhay. I live at 72 Wall Street. I just want to encourage you all to opt into the housing emergency. I want to thank you all for calling this meeting so swiftly and also for passing the good cause eviction bill earlier this year. That time you chose to protect tenants again, and I'm asking you, hoping you will choose to protect these over 1,000 tenants again. Like Justin was just saying, it was a massive shame in 2020 that we were able to pass the ETPA. So it's only one of the tools we can use now. We need to keep doing everything we can to provide more housing, but we can't stop progress in the pursuit of perfection. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Pat Ross.
Hello, council members. My name is Kat Voss. I live in Kingston, the Ponkahocky neighborhood, and I urge you to support the Emergency Tenant Protection Act. I do agree with the previous speakers who said that we need more housing. This is absolutely true. But right now, the purchase of apartment buildings as investment properties for individuals, for Airbnbs, and for other corporations who profit on high rent is causing the number of available and affordable units to shrink. It's not that we only need to build more housing, it's that we need to keep the housing that is currently available, which is already at a disastrously low number. We need to slow down this process of dwindling units and soaring rents immediately in order to ensure that people who live in Kingston now can continue to live in Kingston. Notably, the speakers who've spoken in opposition to the Emergency Tenant Protection Act have failed to acknowledge the other provisions of the ETPA besides rent control. The act would enable tenants to take recourse against landlords who fail to follow up on their end of the lease by repairing and maintaining the units that they're living in. Right now, we have so many units where tenants are living in outdoor spaces that are still damaged by storms that happened weeks or months ago. They're living in units with appliances that do not work. They don't have access to proper laundry facilities. They don't have access to clean hallways. This is landlord's responsibility. They're not following through with it. The ETPA can help ensure that they do. Landlords pretend that continuing to increase rents will somehow improve the situation of people who live in Kingston. I don't see how that can happen. The only people who benefit from the increase in rent are the landlords who profit from that rent. And it is telling that no one has shown up to oppose the ETPA who is not a landlord profiting from rent increases currently. If you can't run a business without forcing families out of their homes and into poverty, you shouldn't be running a business. If you're losing money on a building that you own, consider selling it to someone who will live in it rather than using it to turn a profit at the expense of our community. Landlords are taking advantage of the housing scarcity to charge exorbitant and unreasonable rent for profit and failing to maintain their units. They know that alternative housing simply isn't available, and tenants have little choice but to stay in units that don't have sufficient means or don't have the appliances and benefits that they agreed to when they initially signed their lease. Furthermore, the ETPA is not a solution, but it is a beginning. It would help ensure that families can stay in Kingston while we work on longer-term solutions like increasing the number of available units, new construction, regulating energy costs to protect both landlords and tenants from companies like Mid-Hudson charging ridiculous rates during times of need, taxing and regulating companies like Airbnb who profit from our housing crisis, and subsidizing sustainable building improvements that will reduce energy costs and maintenance costs over time. Thank you very much.
Good evening, my name is Sandra Byrne. I've lived here for 16 years now on 63 West Chestnut Street. I would like to offer my support and really implore everybody that's here to really consider and lend their support to the resolution, because I see so many people that desperately need the support and the help that this would bring would be at least a very good stopgap, and I hope that this can happen. I want to thank also the people that brought the better arguments that I could, but I especially want to say that, you know, we don't just have to do one or the other. We can have more housing built as well as, you know, do this for now. Anyway, that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Barbara Clinton.
Hi, I'm Laura Clinton. I just want to tell my story. My story is that I've lived in Kingston over 40 years, and I know that times have changed. Currently live in an apartment that I've been living in for 13 years. These are not my landlords. My landlords do not live in this town. Sotheby's. I've been asked about 3 months ago to leave my apartment because my landlords either want to sell the property or they want to upgrade the property to increase the rent. So I'm a grandmother, I'm a grandmother who has custody of 3 of her grandchildren and raised my own 4 children. It's devastating to me because the rents are so high. On Catherine Street, a rent alone for 3 bedrooms, $3,400. I am on Section 8. Yes, I'm a low income, working at Walmart, and I receive disability. But I also have 2 college degrees, and I work really hard since I was 14 years old. It is very hard to find a place to live. I need to be out of my apartment by September 1st. I have been refused an apartment on Henry Street alone because I don't have a credit score of 600. I work really hard to increase my credit so I can become a homeowner worthy. There's people that are on your council that know that. There's people that are in my life that mentor me and help me work on my creditness. So it's not just about being low income. There are people that I know that are low income like me that are working with REDCO and other agencies to become homeowners in our own community. It is sad that I have to look for a place to live while I throw some of my stuff away in my own home because my landlord doesn't want to take care of the roaches that have infested my home. He decided, he was forced to, by REDCO, to fumigate my home. Yet I have Kingston Housing inspectors come to my apartment every 2 years, living there 13 years with only 2 windows replaced. And every winter, I've had to put plastic on the windows. And we're talking about a rent increase. Putting a cap on rent increase is necessary for a person like me that only makes so much and can only make so much. I had a huff and puff just to walk up the steps.
30 seconds.
And I'm saying this because it is necessary so that I'm able to get out of being a low income and be able to afford my own home in this city. You don't know people until you know their story. It is very important to help us so we can further ourselves to be able to live in the old town that I raised my own children and I'm raising my grandchildren in. Thank you.
We're gonna go over to the Zoom speakers, so just to give us a couple minutes to switch gears here. I'd like to see. We will open the floor after we go to the Zoom meeting, or we have signed up ahead of time, and then I'll open the floor in person. And then go back. All right, we are now going over to the Zoom speakers. First speaker, if we could just say a few words before I time you, just to make sure our system is set up. First speaker, please. Michael McKee.
Good evening.
Hi, Michael, if you could just say a few words to make sure that we can hear you.
Yes, I hope you can hear me. I'm having trouble hearing some of the speakers, but is that good?
No, I mean, I can hear you up here, but the chambers can't hear you.
Okay, what should I do?
Just hold tight, I'll be right back.
Okay.
Here's one. You have them try again. Can you say a few words, Michael?
Hello? Is that better?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Michael McKee. I'm the treasurer of the Tenants Political Action Committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. I'm testifying tonight in support of Reso 144. I want to start out by congratulating the city of Kingston, the mayor, the members of the Common Council, the staff who helped get us here, as well as the advocates for you are going to be the first municipality north of Westchester and Rockland County that opted into the state rent regulation system since the law was changed 3 years ago that made it possible for you to do that. I want to focus on two aspects. Number one is I submitted a longer statement, which obviously I won't have time to read, but I do hope you will take a look at it. You have 30 days from Thursday to come up with the names of 9 people to serve on the Ulster County Rent Guidelines Board. I want to urge you in particular to find fair-minded, progressive, pro-regulation people to serve as the 5 public members who form a majority on the board. It's very important that anyone you appoint to this board be someone who believes in ETPA, believes in rent regulation. We have had public members in other counties where they were hostile to the very idea of rent regulation and consequently supported very high rent increases. You do not want to make that mistake. Secondly, you need to engage in a serious public education effort. Once this law goes into effect Thursday, rents are frozen and no one can be evicted in these apartments. Tenants who don't have leases are going to have to sign a lease, but they will be in a very good position to negotiate the terms and conditions of those leases. Unlike an apartment seeker, someone who goes into a landlord's office and you sign the first piece of paper they put underneath you, because if you don't, they'll give the apartment to somebody else. ETPA tenants who don't have leases are in a position of being able to negotiate the terms and conditions of those leases. This is going to take a good deal of education, and I think the city of Kingston has an obligation to help educate the tenants. You also need to explain to tenants, especially those who've been hit with rent increases in the last 3 years since you first began speaking about ETPA, that they have a right to file a fair market rent appeal to challenge their current rent. That won't just happen automatically. People have to be educated about that. So thank you very much. And again, congratulations.
Thank you. Just for folks in chambers, if you could refrain from talking, because the chatter is a little up here and it's harder for us to hear on Zoom. Thank you. Next speaker, please. Ed Katz.
And you need to unmute yourself.
Ed, please unmute yourself. We'll come back to that speaker. Can we have the next speaker, please?
Robin Ranga.
Great. Can folks hear me?
Yes, welcome.
Great. Thank you so much. And thanks so much for this council for considering this housing emergency declaration. And thanks so much to all the folks that came out tonight. My name is Bravin Runga. I'm with For the Many. We're a grassroots organization that organizes folks right here in the city of Kingston. And we hear from folks every day that can't afford their rent and can't find a place to live. We hear stories about how their landlords are jacking up their rent, not because of offsetting costs, but to make more money by gentrifying neighborhoods. They tell us how they can't find anywhere to live that they can afford. And the few places there are to live, they can't even afford the rent. And based off of the conversations that we've had and that anyone can have in the city of Kingston, there's very clearly a housing emergency here. And now the Common Council must make that official and declare a housing emergency. Opting into the ETPA would allow tenants in over 1,000 units in the city to have protections from skyrocketing rents, from housing scarcity, and from landlord mistreatment. And this would benefit some of the folks that have been living in this community for decades who are being displaced. And the only people that it won't help are wealthy landlords. If you take note of everything you've heard tonight, you've heard tenants come out and demonstrate incredible courage by sharing their stories and asking that you take action to protect them. And the opposition to this very obviously comes from a small organized minority who are landlords and are clearly more interested in protecting their profits than the needs of the tenants in the city. It's clear responsibility and that's the New York City, other city in the state that's opted into the ETPA, they will tell you that
You're cutting me in a little bit here.
Stabilized apartment. Oh, now can you hear me better now?
Yes, we can now. It seems to be on your end, so you're good? You still there?
Is this better?
It's too hard to hear you, so if you want to follow up with
Yeah, now?
so you get that to the council.
Great.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Patrick Pelicano.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi there.
A few words so we make sure we're good.
Sure. Check, check. 1, 2. Kokomo. Kokomo.
That'd be great.
Great. Yeah, I would just like to voice support for this protection for tenants in Kingston. Housing is a human right. You know, even that person that was trying to inform, you know, once this protection is in place, the amount of loopholes that people are still going to have to try and jump through in order to protect themselves. It just shows the lack of dignity that all of us have when it comes to housing, whether or not they're like a, you know, some small landlord, but sure, like that, people are trying to like make money off of housing. And then in addition to that, people that are renting, it's, yeah, I just want to convey that this is treating one very small symptom of what is a much larger issue. And in our small municipalities, we actually have the ability to protect our tenants, protect renters and actually guarantee housing in certain ways. So yeah, I would encourage you all to continue that whichever way you can. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Sheryl Schneider.
Hello.
Hi, I wanted to say a few words just to make sure sound is good.
Hello, 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 radio.
You're all set whenever you're
All
ready.
right, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak. My name is Sheryl Schneider. I live at 1119 Creek Locks Road, Bloomington, New York. I was orphaned at the age of 20, so I didn't have a familial home until I purchased one at the age of 43 years old. So for many years I rented. And even though I came up with a way to pay my rent, it was always a struggle. And it was in a time when landlords weren't trying to live off of their tenants' rents. It was when they were investing in buildings as an asset to build equity for the future. And today it seems to be different, but I want to tell you that I know what housing insecurity feels like, because not having a familial home, if I didn't make the rent and obey all the rules and do whatever the landlords wanted, and I rented in luxury high rises that were below market. I rented farmhouses out in the country in Rensselaer. I rented in the cities of Albany and in the state of Texas in 2 different cities. I rented a whole lot. And there were all kinds of landlords. Some of them were in corporate, some of them were like sole proprietors that had 1 building. And I want to tell you, you're always rent insecure. Fortunately for me, I was able to purchase a house in 1998 at the bottom of the market because IBM had pulled out, and I am a white woman who had good credit, so I got 95% financing. You show me someone who can buy a house for $3,750 today. It is not possible. So by the grace of God, I know what it means to have a roof over my head that I can afford. I also know what it means I can only project what it means to have to live in this world. I want to totally support the ETPA. I think it should be expanded to cover all tenants. I think there's much more we need to do. Thank you for passing the other, the good cause eviction already. But, I was very, very fortunate. It drives me nuts to think that my neighbors and other people in this county cannot afford the roof over their head. And you know what? I heard landlords talk about the cost of utilities. You give your tenants the most inefficient appliances. So if your electric went up, just imagine what their electric bill did for their refrigerators. And, own your assets. Use it to parlay more financing, own a lot of buildings and sell some of them if you need to, but provide for your tenants what they really deserve already. And we need we need rent stabilization for this entire city. Everyone has a right to food, clothing, shelter, and health care. Thank you so much.
Next speaker, please. I have someone as just Laura, so I'm going to need your last name.
Hi.
Hi, can you say a few words, including your full name?
My full name is Laura Lisa Mata.
Thank you. You're all set?
I am all set.
All right, go ahead.
Okay. First of all, thank you for addressing me, as I would like to address the Common Council. I have spoken before the Common Council in the past, just because I really care about my community, and my housing issue is pretty complicated. So I do have a landlord who is highly aggressive, does not address the issues with the building. I almost had my Jeep slide off the back of my driveway off a cliff because they don't plow, mold issues, you name it. I just try to keep the roof rather, over the head of my family. I love the people in my building. I truly care about my community. People that do know me know that I'm a little bit of an activist and a volunteer in the community. And the things that matter is not aggressing against people that are trying to afford stable housing, and the protection has to be somewhere. Just today, I get a phone call from my landlord stating that I need to meet him at his attorney's office so that I can sign a waiver So he's indemnified from any harm done from the mold not being remediated from the building. We've had the building inspectors out here. We have done everything we can as the little small community building that we are. We hear songs, stories, whatever they are. We just try to go with it, but we're told that, his mother, whatever the reasons are. The fact of the matter is, he is trying to sell a building that was gifted to him by his mother. And he's not being responsible in terms of thinking about what matters for the people that live here and the health consequences that have resulted. We have multiple people that are disabled in the building. I am as well. And we're just trying. But we do pay our rent, we pay on time, and we communicate and we care about the property. And we care about our larger community. And COVID was a huge takeover in terms of driving up the prices. Maybe now they're fleeing and.
Thank you. Time is up.
I appreciate your time. I most certainly do. And thank you for your consideration to rental protection.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Amanda, and then I will also need your last name.
My name is Amanda Sissenstein. I live in the 4th Ward. Please do not be demoralized by the scare tactics of the landlords or their crocodile tears for tenants, especially landlords who claim that they make no profit. It's true enough that the ETPA is not enough. Like good cause, it is a step in the right direction, but neither or both combined are going to solve the housing crisis. So yes, this is important, but it's only going to cover the people who are living in larger developments. We also need to figure out ways to protect the other tenants. So again, it's a good step and it's the right step, but it's just a step. There is no evidence to show that the ETPA reduces the amount of units or that it drives up the rent of units not covered by ETPA. That is scare tactics by landlords. And it's not just that it's a lack of housing. It's a lack of housing that people can afford. More housing alone is not the answer if there are no controls over what that housing costs. There are empty houses all over Kingston, but people can't afford that to live in them because the hoarding of real estate for the purpose of profit has made housing so expensive that working class people cannot afford to live in these places, certainly not to own their own homes. Please pass the ETPA. I'm done.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Rebecca Zangen.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, you can.
Okay, thank you. My name is Rebecca Zangen, and I live at 56 Valentine Ave in Ward 3. Making sure that everyone here has access to safe, stable housing will make Kingston stronger as a community. Kids are going to be able to learn better. Seniors and people with disabilities can stay healthy. We can all get to know our neighbors and establish roots and trusted relationships. But making sure that we all have a roof over our head, of course, is not easy right now, especially as the economic impacts of COVID, inflation, rising gas costs stretch renters' budgets much further than they already were, which was very stretched. So luckily, instituting a rent stabilization program under the ETPA is a proven solution that increases housing stability for renters and reduces risk of displacement and homelessness. One of my neighbors spoke earlier about a Stanford study that showed that rent control increased rents overall in San Francisco. First, I want to say that rent stabilization under the ETPA is substantively different from the rent control policy in San Francisco, and also that other housing experts have found significant flaws in that study's assumptions and methodology, which I can outline in written testimony. In conclusion, I urge the council to approve this resolution. However, Critics have said that rent stabilization won't solve the housing crisis, so I want to be clear. It should be one component of a holistic plan. This policy must be matched by additional efforts, including but not limited to stronger restrictions on short-term rentals like Airbnb, zoning changes, the creation of much more permanently affordable subsidized low-income housing with emphasis on permanent and on low income, as well as supporting community land trust models. Thanks very much for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Megan Newton.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, my name is Megan Newton. I live at 304 Greenkill Avenue in Kingston. Actually, one of my, one of my tenants that live here was just on the call. It's just ridiculous that these landlords are able to just say, here, you have to pay this amount of money. No renovations. I've had the same carpet, the same flooring. I've had issues. We've called the building department on this man. He's done nothing. Okay, I've missed work in the wintertime because they don't come and plow, just like she said. And I just got a letter here, $200 increase. $200 increase. For what? For the same apartment I've been living in for 6 years. You haven't done nothing in this apartment, and it's not fair. We need to be able to afford a place to live. I pay everything on my own. I get no government assistance, like some of the landlords were saying before. No government assistance, no Section 8, no REPCO, no nothing. I pay everything myself because I work my behind off to support my children. Okay, something has to be done because a landlord should not just be able to be like, if you don't pay this, you got to get out. It's not fair. It's not right. And this landlord that we have is a slumlord. He does nothing unless we harass to cut the grass, to plow, to the mold situation. You know what I mean? It's not right. So something has to be done. It's a right to have a place to live, affordable place to live. And we elected officials to work for your constituents. You know what I mean? That's why we vote, right? And something has to be done. It's not right. It's not right. And he is very aggressive. And if you don't do this, then you get out. You know what I mean? It's not right. We have a right to live in a habitable place where we can afford to live. And that's my time. That's all I have to say. Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Last speaker on Zoom, and then we'll come in person, and then we do know that there are hands up, and we'll come back to you. One last Zoom speaker for now. Next speaker, please.
Annie Hayes.
Hi, how are you, everyone?
Welcome.
Can you hear me? Testing.
Yes, you're all set.
Okay. Pretty much, first of all, I'm grateful that the ETPA is on the table, but like a lot of people have said before me, it's a step in the right direction. And as I'm listening to some of the impacted tenants, it seems like we have more than a few cases of good cause that people should be able to bring to court sooner or later. But I guess with good cause, you got to be evicted, or eviction proceedings are supposed to take place. I think that we need to expand the ETPA. I believe people have spoke on that. And also for the board, I strongly suggest that we have some of the housing activists in the community and impacted people on the board. And we need a mass educator, not only for ETPA, but also for good cause. Just like we did that road warrior thing that everybody got in their mailbox, we need to do the same thing about tenant protections and tenant rights. And that's all I have to say right now, and have a good night.
Thank you. We're gonna go back to in person. I'll just need a second to switch the technology here. Is there anybody else in chambers who would like to speak and has not spoken already? All right, well, I know the woman up front had asked earlier, so I'll just come right up, just give me a second to turn that down and come back to my seat. You can't close the door. This is an open meeting. We have to have that. And
Gotta stay.
Yeah.
it's not only the open meeting law, but a fire safety issue. So if we could move the podium for you, we could do that. We just can't close the door. Start out. Or if you could state your name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Yeah, my name is Julian Steele. In St. Remy, I have a three-family house that I rent here in the city of Kingston. I've lived in the area for nearly 4 years. I support this bill, but I see it as only a start. It's only a beginning. I would like to see every rental property, every landlord covered, not just certain ones at a certain year center. Everybody, that includes me. So thus ended that. Just keep going with this. Don't stop now. And the next thing I'd like to raise is I would like to see a bill brought up in the city. I should mention first, you need to increase the budget of your building department so that there are more inspectors and there are more, people that can talk with the tenants, check out the buildings, and make sure that they're good and that everything is in order. And the next thing is that I would like the council to consider another bill. I've been telling a lot of people about it as I go around my errands, and that is jail time for slumlords. It is not enough that they finally fix something. No. I'm so offended by their behaviors, by their treatment of other people. To me, it's unconscionable. There's been no heat for 3 weeks, the city department, building department moves in, checks out true or false, fixes it at union wage, and adds it to the landlord's tax bill, and the landlord goes to jail for 3 weeks. That's the bill. I'd like to see you initiate it and get it going. It would be hard to enforce. These crimes, the crimes are obvious and need to be punished severely. It's not a piece of wood in an apartment with space, it's a home.
Maybe the Yankee can in the back. I saw your hand next. Do you want to speak? Or at least Yankee hat, maybe not a fan. Just state your name and address for the record.
Israel Aline, 105 Middle Street. I would like to say I like what you're doing with the rent control, but I lived here for 25 years, and I remember everyone telling me about the days of IBM, how it's so flourishing in this community, and how they dreamed of the days coming back And I'm finally starting to see it. I'm finally starting to see the days of IBM. And now I'm hearing about rent control. Now, I do agree tenants should have affordable rent. But if you pass rent control, you have to think about the economics that's going to happen after that. For example, it may make Kingston go back into a slum type of city. For example, in New York City, when they passed it, for the whole 80s, New York City was destroyed. It took 20 years for it to recuperate. So be mindful. It seems that the area that you're discussing seems to be Midtown Kingston. Because the ones that were here in downtown and uptown have already been, seem to be done. So it seems like you're focusing on Midtown, where it seems like most of these problems are. But you also have to be mindful of the ones who are coming to this area to invest in the community, because they are going to drive the economy here. They're going to provide jobs as well. Now, I think there should be a fair trade, but if a person comes in and pays the prices that he's paid in the last 2 years because of the pandemic, and you put rent control when we have a recession, then what do we have? A repeat of 2008 again. So you just need to be set the parameters where everyone's is good. I think one of the lessons learned from history is that you don't pay attention to what happens, you're going to repeat it. So in 2001, 9/11 happened. Everyone scattered from the city and came up here. Houses are all out of whack. And by 2008, all prices were slashed. You have tons of zombie homes on the market, not just city homes. What about those properties? Can we start providing housing out of those properties? I think back in 2016, they had about $40 million worth of property.
There isn't this.
And so let's find an even keel for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? I know I saw their hands, but I can't remember. Sure, come on up. And then, Gloria, is that my phone?
Hi, good evening. I'm Amy Whitman. I live at 85 Manor Place in the 6th Ward. And I would urge everyone to declare the housing crisis. And I'm here tonight to say that I support resolution 144. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Hello, everybody. Council President, Council, Clerk Kinsey. My name is Michael Tierney. I live at 25 John Street, Apartment 2 in the 2nd Ward. I have a good job. I work for the state. I remember over 3rd of my income goes directly to trying to keep a roof over my head. Goes into the pocket of a faceless Brooklyn mega conglomerate that owns my apartment. That in 94-degree heat, 50% of my windows are painted shut. It's really special that some landlords are members of the community. That's great. Mine's not. I support this resolution. I urge you all to do the same. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other speakers? If you've already spoken, you can't speak again, but again, if you want to write written comments, you could do that to the council.
That's 30 seconds.
I'm sorry, sir.
Hi, my name is Emilia, and I'm not a resident of Kingston, but my majority of my family and many of my friends are or were because they were displaced or are hoping that they can actually be able to live indoors again. And so there is a lot of homelessness that's happened as a result of rent increases. And I've actually spoken to some of the people who spoke before Karen told me how she wanted the Emergency Tenant Protection Act, and she was telling me that story. When we were talking before, and, you know, I have a friend who's in, Eddyville and is in a welfare hotel, just wanted to rent an actual place in Kingston. And I have a friend who's been trying to get an apartment, can't get an apartment in Kingston. Like I said, a lot of cousins who live here in Kingston. And so I just know that I don't know if I can say I represent many people who want the Emergency Tenant Protection Act, but I know so many people I talk to really want it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else in chambers? We have a couple more Zoom speakers. Is there anybody else in chambers who would like to speak who has not done so already? Anybody else in chambers who'd like to speak? Anybody else in chambers who'd like to speak? Hearing nobody else, I'll turn it back to Zoom. So can I have the next Zoom speaker, please? Laura Brown.
Hi, thank you. My name is Laura Brown. I live at 14 Spruce Street. And I'm speaking today to urge my alderperson rep to vote yes on declaring a housing crisis, Resolution 144, as well as speaking in support of enacting the ETPA. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
I have just Terry, so I'll need your last name, please.
Hi, my last name is Coleo Gomez.
Thank you. Welcome. You're set.
Good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. First of all, I wanted to thank Carl Frankel for tipping me off to the meeting. I just want to tell you a little story. In about 1974, I've been a resident of Kingston all my life. My family has been here for many, many years and have been business owners and active in the community. And around 1974, my grandmother had a very good friend that lived at Dutch Village Apartments in Kingston. One Saturday afternoon, I went with my grandmother to visit her friend at Dutch Village, and it was the most beautiful place I had ever seen. I was an impressionable teenager at the time, and I just had never seen anything like it. And in my wildest dreams, I never thought that I would live in a place like this. Well, fast forward about 40 years, I find myself living in Dutch Village. It was owned by a lovely woman who was also a resident of Kingston, and this place was fantastic. Fast forward a bunch of years, I don't know what happened. People came in from outside of our community, and I am living in a place. Every morning I wake up, I'm living in a place that I don't even recognize. I've lived in the same apartment for 30 years. I raised my son in this apartment. I've had lovely neighbors, and it's horrible what has happened to our home. You know, people have to understand that not everyone wants to purchase a home. That's not the end game for everybody for whatever reason. And I have always worked. I'm a very fortunate person, and I still find myself in a position where I'm unhappy. First of all, I realize that there are many people that are not in the position that I'm in and are really, really struggling. But we need to find a way to hold the landlords accountable. I woke up one morning and people had just come into our community, and I'm not against anybody making money, making a profit. That's the American way. Everybody deserves that. But I also feel that these landlords must be accountable to the tenants, to the people that do pay the rent. And it's just unbelievable what's happened. I know that this is not perfect. I know that it doesn't address every issue, but it will be a first step. I want to thank the council for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight, and I urge the council to please pass this. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all we have. I'll ask Again, if there's anybody either in chambers or if you're in Zoom, you can raise your hand. Is there anybody else who would like to speak? Yeah. Come on up. Say your name and address for the record, please.
Hello, my name is Nicola Taylor and I live at 66 Garden Street in Kingston. There's not very much I can say that hasn't already been said by someone else or that would be more powerful than the personal stories we've already heard. But I just want to express that nobody's right to make a profit should ever be valued more than someone else's right to have a safe home to live in. Nobody's property rights should ever be prioritized over someone else's right to survive. Please pass this measure, and please, like many people before me have said, don't consider this as the end, but continue to do more to protect tenants in Kingston. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Any other speakers, either in Zoom or in chambers? All right, we have one more on Zoom. So next speaker, please.
Emily Payne.
Hi, I'll also just keep this short. I think the previous speaker said it best. My name is Emily Payne. I am a resident at 14 Spruce Street, and I would like to urge the council to vote yes and support the resolution and take further steps to protect tenants' rights. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Any other speakers? Any other speakers? Hearing no more speakers? Right. If you would like to write comments, you can send them to Elisa Tinty, our clerk, at emtinty@kingston-ny.gov before Thursday's meeting. Thank you for participating. We really appreciate hearing all the voices. I will now call this public hearing closed at 7:59 p.m. Thank you very much. Good night.